Most bad news arrives slowly, through hints, tension, or conversations you can sense coming. But mine arrived in 4 words flashed across my phone screen on an ordinary afternoon. Don't come to the wedding. For a few seconds, I genuinely thought it was a mistake, maybe a joke, maybe an accidental send. After all, I was holding a receipt for the latest payment I had made, another chunk of the nearly $100,000 I had poured into my younger sister's dream ceremony. The venue deposit, the imported flowers, the gourmet menu, the live band, the designer gown fittings, every detail existed because I handled it, funded it, and managed it. Yet somehow, I was suddenly not welcome. But the sting of those 4 words wasn't the real heartbreak. The deeper blow came later, when I learned why I was being pushed out, and what plans had been quietly forming behind my back. My name is Amanda Cole, and in my family, I have always carried the unspoken role of the responsible one. Not because anyone admired me for it, but because they assumed I wouldn't complain. Growing up in Oregon City, the expectation wasn't that I'd shine, it was that I'd stay steady. My mother, Carla, used to say, "You're strong, Amanda. You don't need as much attention as your sister." My younger sister, Mila, lived in a completely different universe. Sensitive, dramatic, easily overwhelmed, that's how everyone described her. Soothing her was practically a full-time job for my mom, while I learned early how to fix my own problems, sign my own school forms, and make my own dinners. By the time Mila got engaged to Jason, a charming, polished man who made every room soften when he entered, it felt inevitable that my mother would call me the same night with a list of responsibilities she assumed I'd take on. "Mila wants everything perfect," she said. "You're the one who can make that happen." And just like always, I did. 6 months of coordinating vendors, sending deposits, redesigning plans, confirming appointments. I paid for nearly everything because Mila insisted she wanted the kind of wedding that felt once in a lifetime. And I believed that helping her, maybe just this once, might finally make me feel seen. But in the final weeks leading up to the event, something shifted. Small enough at first that I brushed it off. A coordinator forgetting to copy me in. A decorator checking things with Mila instead of the person making the payments. A planner who suddenly said, "We'll keep Mila more involved moving forward." Little ripples of exclusion that didn't make sense. Not yet. Then came the text. And everything I thought I knew about my place in my family collapsed. But that text was only the beginning. What I discovered next didn't just explain why they wanted me gone, it revealed the plan they never expected me to uncover. Before we continue, tell me your name and where you're watching from in the comments. And please like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. The days after that text felt strangely hollow, like walking through a house where all the furniture has been removed but you can still see the dents in the carpet where it used to sit. I wasn't just confused, I was being quietly pushed out of a wedding I had practically built from the foundation up. And the most unsettling part was how subtle it had all begun. It started with the wedding planner, Rosa. She had always been warm and communicative through the entire planning process. But suddenly, her tone shifted. She stopped updating the shared folder we had used for months. New decisions were being made without any of my input, despite me being the one signing every check. When I emailed her about missing updates, she replied with a vague line that sent a strange chill through me. "We'll keep Mila closely looped in from now on." Closely looped in, as if Mila had magically become the project lead. As if I had somehow become a background extra in a production I was funding. Then there were the vendors. The florist messaged Mila directly to confirm final choices, even though I had already chosen and paid for everything. The band coordinator suddenly addressed her as the main point of contact. The decor team began sending her gallery mock-ups behind my back. Was it oversight? Miscommunication? I tried to convince myself it was nothing that couldn't be fixed with a phone call. But with each passing day, the pattern grew louder. The real turning point came during a video call with Jason's mother, Vivian, a woman who smiled with her mouth but not her eyes. Her voice sounded soft, but each sentence carried a faint edge. We want the ceremony to feel peaceful, she said, pausing on the word as if testing how it landed. Simple. And calm. Calm. A strange word choice. One that would make perfect sense later. A week before the wedding, the distance between Mila and me grew into a full divide. Her texts became short, sometimes she didn't reply at all. The excited voice notes she used to send me about her dream centerpieces or bridal shoes, gone. When I called to ask if she wanted help reviewing the seating chart, she sighed and said, "Let me think about it," before hanging up. No explanation. No warmth. Nothing. By then, something inside me knew the truth even if my mind refused to say it aloud. I wasn't simply being left out. I was being removed. Then came the text. The 4 words that pulled the curtain away from everything. And just when I thought the betrayal had peaked, the explanation revealed why they didn't want me there, and it hit harder than I ever imagined. Because when my mother finally called to explain, she exposed the quiet plan they'd been building, and the role they expected me to play without complaint. When the text arrived, I stared at it for so long that my coffee went cold. My sister, someone I'd protected, supported, and practically raised, had just uninvited me from the wedding I had financed. No reason. No apology. No hesitation. I called her immediately. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Then the typing bubbles appeared once, twice, then vanished. 20 minutes later, my mother called. Her voice had that familiar softness she always used when she wanted me to accept something unfair without questioning it. "Amanda, honey, don't take Mila's message so personally." My stomach tightened. "What's going on?" There was a pause, a practiced pause, then she sighed. "Jason's family wants the environment to feel uncomplicated. You know how you get sometimes. They don't want any tension. Tension. Uncomplicated. Calm." It was the same coded language Vivian had used on the video call. It was suddenly clear this had been discussed long before the text ever reached me. I swallowed hard. "Mom, I'm paying for everything. I've handled every contract. I've made every deposit." "Yes," she replied, her tone almost annoyed, "because you're capable. You're the strong one. Mila is already overwhelmed. We just want her day to be peaceful." There it was, the sentence that had been used all my life to excuse every dismissal, every expectation, every time I was overlooked. You're strong. You can handle it. Meaning? Your feelings don't matter. Your presence isn't necessary. We'll take from you, but we won't include you. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I simply hung up. The apartment felt unusually quiet. Rain tapped against the Seattle window, and the glow of my laptop screen made the room feel colder. I pulled up the digital binder where I kept copies of all the wedding documents, intending to look through them one last time before withdrawing financially. That's when everything changed. Hidden in plain sight, highlighted in bold text that I had never paid attention to before, was something that shifted the entire landscape. Primary contract holder, Amanda Cole. Cancellation rights, exclusive to signer. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. Instead, a strange steadiness washed over me. Every vendor, every service, every reservation, was in my name. The power they assumed I wouldn't use was sitting quietly in my hands. And for the first time in my life, I felt something unfamiliar. Leverage. I looked at the words again, slowly, intentionally. Not with anger, but with clarity. If they didn't want me at the wedding, then they didn't get to keep the wedding I had built. Because that night, with a calmness they never expected, I made a decision that would unravel their entire event before sunrise. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset, because I was awake in a way I had never been before. The wedding binder glowed on my laptop screen, each contract listing the same thing. My name. My signature. My authority. The venue, the caterers, the floral arrangements, the band, the decor team, the transportation, even the custom dessert station, every agreement tied directly back to me. I wasn't merely the one paying. Legally, I was the only person who could change, modify, or cancel anything. And they had removed me from the very celebration I built. I sat there, surrounded by quiet and the faint hum of appliances, letting the realization settle. For years, I had been the family's safety net, the invisible scaffolding holding everything together. Strong, dependable, convenient. But strength doesn't mean endless tolerance. And clarity, once found, is impossible to unsee. At 12:47 a.m., I opened a blank email. My fingers didn't tremble. My breathing didn't shift. I felt steady. More steady than I had in months. Subject: Contract Cancellation Request. To Venue Coordinator. Hello, this is Amanda Cole, the contractual signer on the Jensen Cole wedding. I am formally requesting full cancellation, effective immediately, in accordance with the terms outlined. I read it once. Then I hit send. One email became 2. 2 became 5. 5 became a cascade. The florist. The catering company. The lighting specialists. The live band. The decor team. The luxury transportation fleet. Every vendor received a calm, straightforward request for cancellation. And because I was the signer, the one whose name authorized every payment, every deposit, every detail, they all responded the same way. Understood. We'll process this right away. Confirmed. Refunds will be issued according to policy. No one questioned me. No one hesitated. To the vendors, I wasn't the sideline sister, I was the client. By 3:30 a.m., my inbox was filled with confirmations. The wedding Mila and my mother had quietly taken out of my hands was dissolving one line item at a time. The irony? I felt no sense of revenge. Only relief. Around dawn, the Seattle sky turned that muted gray-blue that always appears after a long storm. I closed my laptop and made coffee, realizing that, for the first time in a long while, I had acted for myself instead of against myself. They told me not to come. Fine. I wasn't coming. But they had forgotten something crucial. The wedding wasn't theirs to keep without me. Because when morning came and they tried to salvage the mess, they discovered the truth: nothing could be restored without the one person they had pushed out. The next morning, my phone looked like a fire alarm. Missed calls stacked one after another, buzzing so constantly that the vibration nearly slid the device off my kitchen counter. But I didn't pick up. Not once. Instead, I made breakfast. Eggs. Toast. Black coffee. The same simple routine that grounded me far more than their panic ever could. By noon, the first message that truly mattered appeared, an email from the venue coordinator. Mila and her family arrived. They attempted to reinstate the booking. As per policy, the signer is required for any restoration. We informed them accordingly. I stared at the message, picturing the scene clearly in my mind. My mother's polite smile becoming tight. Mila's confusion turning into desperation. Jason's mother trying to use her practiced charm to override contractual terms. They were likely expecting an easy fix, assuming that everything could be reversed without consequence, because in the past, I'd always made things easy. But not this time. A second email arrived minutes later. They're upset. We are following protocol. I set my phone down again, letting the weight of their panic drift past me like background noise. For once, their emergency wasn't my responsibility. By mid-afternoon, the text shifted tone entirely, from confusion to anger. Mom. Amanda, call me now. Jason's mother. This is humiliating. We need your cooperation immediately. Then came the message from Mila, short and stinging. Why would you sabotage my wedding? You're being unstable. Unstable. A convenient word families use when they don't want to acknowledge their own cruelty. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a folder on my desktop labeled Records, where I had stored every email, every receipt, every contract, and every cancellation confirmation. Evidence. Facts. The kind of truth that didn't require explanation or apology. Hours later, when the doorbell finally rang, I knew exactly who it would be. I wasn't prepared for how Mila looked, though. She stood in the hallway with mascara smudged, hair tangled, and that familiar fragile expression she had always used when she wanted someone, usually me, to rescue her. But this time, she wasn't just overwhelmed. She was defeated. "Amanda," she whispered when I opened the door, "please, let me come in." She sat at the very edge of the couch, clutching her phone like it was proof the world still made sense. "Why did you do this?" she asked, voice trembling. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lecture. "You told me not to come," I said simply. She shook her head, eyes filling. "I didn't mean it literally. I was stressed. Jason's mom said it would keep things calm." Calm. There it was again, the word they all kept throwing around like a shield. "And you agreed?" I asked. Mila swallowed hard. "Mom said you wouldn't mind, because you're strong." The familiar excuse. The lifelong justification. But I wasn't stepping into that role anymore. Because just as I was confronting Mila, the doorbell rang again, and behind it stood the two people who believed they could still control the outcome. Mila sat crumpled on the couch, her hands twisting together like she was trying to wring the truth out of her own guilt. I had barely processed her last sentence, "Mom said you wouldn't mind, because you're strong," when the doorbell rang again. 3 sharp presses. Impatient. Entitled. Mila flinched, already knowing who it was. When I opened the door, my mother was standing there with the rigid posture of someone who had rehearsed their anger on the drive over. Behind her stood Jason's mother, Vivian, arms crossed, expression carved from cold stone. They didn't ask if they could enter, they simply stepped past me into the apartment like they were walking into a meeting they intended to dominate. My mother was the first to speak. "Amanda Marie Cole, what on earth is the meaning of this nonsense?" Her tone was sharp, but underneath it I heard something new, fear. I folded my arms. "The meaning of what?" She frowned. "Canceling the wedding. You've embarrassed us. You've made this situation far worse than it needed to be." I met her gaze without flinching. "You erased me first." I simply corrected the paperwork. Vivian stepped forward, her voice cool and clipped. "We wanted a harmonious ceremony. We needed to avoid unnecessary complications." "And you think I'm a complication?" I asked. "You tend to be intense," she replied, choosing the word as carefully as a surgeon choosing a scalpel. I let out a small breath, not a laugh, not disbelief, just clarity. "This is me calm, Vivian. Trust me, you haven't seen intense." Her jaw tightened for a moment before she regained composure. My mother waved an impatient hand. "Enough. Fix this, Amanda." "No," I said simply. Mila's voice cracked from the couch. "Amanda, please. The venue told us they can't put anything back unless you approve it. They made us wait in the lobby like we had no authority." "That's because you didn't," I replied. Mila's eyes filled. "Just sign everything again. Please. Jason's family is furious." "You wanted me gone," I reminded her. "Now you want me back only because you need access to what I provided, not because you actually value me." Mom stepped closer, lowering her voice like she could shame me into compliance. "This isn't you. You're overreacting." "No," I said softly. "For once, I'm reacting exactly as I should." Silence rippled across the room. Then I delivered the line that had been forming inside me ever since the cancellations began. "You removed me from your wedding. So I removed your wedding from my name." Mila's breath hitched. My mother froze. Vivian went pale. Their power had evaporated the moment mine surfaced. But the real shock came afterward, when the fallout didn't break me, it changed me. When the door finally clicked shut behind them, the silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was liberating. The kind of silence that fills the room after a storm finally breaks apart and the air becomes breathable again. For the first time in years, I wasn't shaking, overthinking, or scrambling to clean up the emotional mess of others. I felt steady. Centered. Whole. Over the next few days, the chaos outside my walls grew louder, while my own life grew quieter. Refund emails continued to land in my inbox, clean confirmations, polite acknowledgements, tidy closures. Every message carried the same underlying truth: I had acted entirely within my rights. No emotional manipulation, no impulsive decisions, just contractual authority that belonged to me and had always belonged to me. My mother called for an entire week straight. Sometimes twice a day. Sometimes 10. Her voicemail shifted tone like a revolving door: anger, disbelief, guilt, desperation, finally confusion. As if she couldn't comprehend how the daughter who never pushed back had suddenly learned how to stand her ground. But I didn't answer. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. Instead, I focused inward. For once, I began rebuilding myself instead of rebuilding problems I never created. I returned to therapy, something I had paused during the wedding chaos because I kept telling myself I'll go back when things calm down. But things never calmed down. Not in a family like mine. Dr. Marlene's office felt exactly how I remembered: warm lighting, soft chairs, a clock that ticked slow enough to make you breathe deeper just by listening. But this time, I didn't spend the session dissecting Mila's crises or my mother's expectations. I talked about me. What peace looked like. What it felt like to finally stop apologizing for having boundaries. What I wanted my life to be, not the life shaped around everyone else's emergencies. It was unfamiliar, yes. But it felt right. I also signed up for a Women in Tech mentorship circle, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for because family issues always came first. Wednesday nights suddenly became the part of the week I looked forward to. Rooms filled with women who spoke honestly, asked for help, and didn't weaponize each other's strength. Being around them helped me realize something simple but revolutionary. Strong doesn't mean silent. Strong doesn't mean endlessly giving. Strong doesn't mean being the family's emotional pack mule. And slowly, the version of myself that had always been buried under obligations began resurfacing. One morning, while walking around the quiet edge of Lake Union with a black coffee warming my hands, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. My life finally felt like mine. Not borrowed. Not demanded. Not owed. Mine. But the story didn't end there, because one unexpected message arrived, and it forced me to decide what forgiveness really meant. Life settled into a calm rhythm I had never known before. No constant buzzing phone. No emotional emergencies disguised as family needs. No walking on eggshells to avoid being labeled too direct or too intense. For the first time, the quiet wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. Weeks passed with me focusing on work, my mentorship circle, and the slowly growing version of myself that wasn't built around sacrifice. My therapist kept reminding me that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you choose when to open. I'd never had doors before. Only expectations. Then one morning, while sorting through my mail, I saw an envelope addressed in handwriting I immediately recognized. Mila's. My first instinct was to set it aside and ignore it. But something nudged me to open it, not obligation, not guilt, just curiosity. Inside was a letter. No excuses. No dramatic pleas. No manipulation. Just honesty. She wrote about the pressure she felt from Jason's family, how she believed staying silent would keep the peace. She admitted she had allowed others to paint me as the problem because it was easier than confronting her own discomfort. She said she hadn't realized how deeply she had depended on me, not just financially, but emotionally, and how she had taken that dependence for granted. Then came the part one didn't expect. I hurt you because I expected you to absorb the hurt like you always do. I didn't think about what it cost you. I'm sorry. Simple. Direct. Human. I didn't forgive her immediately. Forgiveness was no longer something I handed out like spare change. It was something that required thought, boundaries, and time. But for the first time, her words weren't another attempt to pull me back into a cycle of giving and disappearing. This was different, like she finally saw the real cost of everything I had carried. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, not to forget, but to revisit when I was ready. The wedding, of course, never happened as planned. Jason's family tried to salvage it, reschedule it, reframe it, but without the original deposits and my approval, the elaborate vision collapsed. Friends whispered. Relatives speculated. Social media threads tried to piece together rumors. But none of it mattered. Because the real transformation wasn't the cancelled wedding. It was the moment I stopped letting other people define my value. I wasn't the backup plan anymore. I wasn't the strong one by default. I wasn't the fixer, the wallet, or the emotional cushion. I was a woman who finally realized that boundaries aren't punishments. They're protection. If there's one thing this entire ordeal taught me, it's this. When you stop shrinking yourself to fit someone else's comfort, you finally step into the life meant for you. And sometimes, losing the approval of the wrong people is the first step toward finding the peace you've always deserved.